The Friday Rugby Preview with Stuart Cameron.
Hello and welcome to the Friday Rugby Preview on Rugby Radio, where we look ahead to the club rugby season in Scotland from a Borders perspective. And in the show, I'm joined by Dale Clancy. And Dale, it was a mixed bag for local clubs last week. Of the 13 clubs playing national and regional rugby, just 3 wins, 2 draws and 8 losses. So not the best start.
Yeah, from a Borders perspective, it wasn't the best start to our campaign, but some of the victories that the clubs did get were really good. You think of Hoyk's win in particular. It was a good start to the season for them. Peebles getting off to a good start in their division. Berwick picking up a draw in the same division as well. So, although probably the other teams had really difficult fixtures as well, it wasn't the best start to the campaign.
Well, in the Premiership, Hoyk, as you mentioned, got off to a winning start, 27-12 against Glasgow Hawks. Kelso got a commendable draw at Musselburgh, 31 each, but pretty heavy defeats for Selkirk at home to Curry and Jed in their match at Riverside Park against Edinburgh Accies. Tomorrow's another day, though, and Hoyk travel to Fullerton Park to take on Mar. And let's hear from Hoyk head coach Matty Douglas.
That was great to get a win last weekend, opening day. Always good to start the campaign with a win and get points on the table. And look, I thought we played really well for 60-65 minutes. I think the last kind of 15 we probably did fall off a little bit. Hawks scoring 2 late tries, and look, that probably comes down to a little bit of switching off and a little bit of playing too much rugby in the middle of the park in the second half. I thought we probably could have played more in Hawks 22 and probably took its toll in the last 10 minutes, the amount of work that we done. So look, on the whole, really positive. I know Graham and Lewis were pleased with a lot of players' individual performances, and look, we've had there's a few more players who are back from injury this week that may feature at the weekend, so we're always bolstering the squad, and it's the competition that keeps driving these players. Competition for places is key, and that's what keeps these players focused. And look, we know how tough a challenge this will be heading to Mar this weekend. It's a tough place to go, Fullerton. We won there last year, but look, that doesn't even come into it. We know individually we're going to have to be there and switched on, and if we get it right collectively, then look, we are a hard team to beat, and that's a mentality that we need to install into the players this season, is that target's on our back. I've heard that a few times the last few weeks about how everybody's chasing us and we've got the target on our back, but look, that's a massive driver for me. It's a massive driver for this squad that we need to keep getting better, and we cannot switch off week to week. And if we continue to keep progressing and keep working hard, then we'll make it tough for teams to try and beat us. And that's the kind of mentality we've got within the squad. We're not a squad that is bullish and that just thinks we need to turn up. We work really hard, and look, if the target's on our back, then so be it. We'll embrace the challenges. So look, Mar is a tough place to win, and if we defensively, if we're there and we can get a set piece platform, then look, we'll be looking to try and get a big result. But Mar will be tough side to beat, and they certainly won't roll over after. They'll be looking to get back to winning ways this weekend. So yeah, look, it's another big game for us. We go on a tough run, Mar, Kelso, Accies and Curry. So look, we'll be wanting to pick up as many points as we can in the next couple of weeks, and we're certainly looking forward to taking the trip to Truden on Saturday.
So a tough challenge for the Greens, but if they're going to be champions again, they need to take the scalp of clubs like Mar.
Yeah, I think they definitely do. It's a difficult place to travel. They've been defeated on the road before as well up there, so that they're familiar foes now. They've been in the Premiership together for a few years, and certainly been up to towards the top end of the table. So it's going to be a big battle. Mar, off the back of a narrow defeat against Heriots, they will be looking to try and get their campaign off to a good start. They were really disjointed last season, and I don't think they'll be wanting a repeat of that, so they'll be wanting to try and steady the ship pretty early on, and what better way for them to do it against the reigning champions.
Kelso coming off the back of a 31-31 draw at Musselburgh in a game that they should have won despite a slow start. They're at home to Heriots Blues, who started their campaign with a home win against Mar at Golden Acre. The thoughts now of Kelso Director of Rugby, Neil Hinnigan.
We welcome Heriots to Poynter Park this Saturday for our first Premiership game at home. Hoping for a big crowd, I'm sure there will be. Last week 31-all up at Musselburgh, not the worst result. One we felt we probably should have won, but yeah, we could have lost it as well. So 3 good points on the road and looking to build on that. Main objective this week is to be better in defence, more width in defence. Last week got caught out with a little bit of the speed of the game and some of the width that Musselburgh played with, and I think that's just an idea of what's in this league and the step up. Obviously Heriots are a natural wide playing side under Phil Smith and Jim Parker. They like to throw the ball about, and they'll come down with the sunshine on their back and the hard firm wide pitch at Pointer. I'm sure they'll be looking to put some points on us, so that's probably the main focus, and then hopefully the attack will take care of itself. Changes wise, we lost Archie Cowan, vice captain, last week to a broken hand, so he's out for around about 6-7 weeks, so it's a shame for Archie, but James Glendinning impressed for Kelso Sharks a couple of weeks ago, and then he did come off the bench at Musselburgh and impressed again, so he gets a start at 6. Liam Tate comes in on the bench and James Thompson comes in on the bench after recovering from injury. Keith Melbourne and Greg Ponton are still on holiday. We should welcome them back next week, depending on how training go and how Saturday's results go. One we're looking forward to, and we can't wait to get our first Premiership game at home this season.
Neil Hinnigan, Director of Rugby at Kelso, and a huge crowd expected for their first home match in the Premiership in over 20 years.
Yeah, I think it's great to see Premiership Rugby back at Kelso. They've built over the last few years and built really, really well. They've got a good culture at their club. Pointer Park is a place where when the crowd get there and it's busy, it's a really difficult place to play rugby. So, Heriots will find it difficult this weekend to travel down there. They've got the confidence of that win against Mar, obviously, but it's different when you're travelling down to Pointer Park of all places. So it'll be a great occasion. I've been a big fan of Kelso over the last couple of years. Maybe not so much the years before that, but that doesn't really matter because they're playing really good rugby. They've got a good culture at their club, and it'd be great for them to get off to a good home start with a win over Heriots.
We'll have a camera at Pointer Park for that one. Jed Forrest will find Curry in determined mood at Millennium Park. Curry, a club who really have come so close in the last couple of years to being Scottish champions. They're desperate to go one better. We hear from Jed Forrest captain Clark Skeldon.
We know we were good in spells last week, but we also know we'll have to be much improved this week to take Annan back down the road with us. There's a welcome return for Gary Monroe, Lewis Walker and Aidan Bambrick in the backs and Ben Howe in the forwards. And with no one picking up any notable knocks last weekend, it gives us a bit of competition for places this week. We do have the luxury of going up there with not a lot of expectation on us, so we can go up there with no pressure and enjoy our rugby and hopefully put in a performance that warrants some points at the end of it.
Clark Skeldon, so what do Jed need to do to get something out of this game against the hot favourites?
Oh, good question, Stuart. I think that's an ominous task. I think after being defeated so heavily by Edinburgh Accies at the weekend, I don't think he could have picked a worse game to try and back it up with. I think if any game, and obviously Jed travel to Philiphaugh next week, the weekend after, I believe. So that's probably a game that they'd welcomed. A nice border derby. It's difficult going to Millennium. I think, you asked me what do they have to do. They have to be strong up front. They need to make sure that they try and match Curry up front and win the battles on the deck. Be there quick. Be sharp to the breakdown, which Jed teams usually are. And if they can suffocate Curry in that way and not give them possession, they're in with a chance. But if they're not making their first up tackles, if they're losing at the set piece, if they don't get that firing, I do think that could be a difficult afternoon for Jed.
Now also in the Premiership, Selkirk are off to Ballgrey to take on Glasgow Hawks, who they beat last year in the corresponding match. Their head coach is Gordon Patterson.
We've been talking as a squad about the positives from last Saturday's game, and at the same time being open and honest about our individual performances and some of the fixes we need to make. Looking at this week, that's going to be a tough shift going through to Glasgow. Hawks done pretty well against Hawick, especially in the last 20 of the game. So we're excited about this week. We're working hard last night at training, again tomorrow night. We're looking, to go through Glasgow with confidence and just in terms of our own performance, and just if these fixes are corrected, then we've got to put we've got to hopefully come away with points. This week we've got Finlay Whelans and Ben Pickles available for selection, so there's boys coming back now, so we'll have a bit of strength and depth as well in certain areas. So we're looking forward to working really hard, and let's get on the road to Glasgow and hopefully come back with some points.
Gordon Patterson. Now, last season Selkirk won 7 of their 9 away games, including 7 in a row. Hard to think that that's going to be repeated this season, but they'll hope to certainly repeat last season's scoreline of 29-19 to Selkirk.
Yeah, I think that's out of the games. I think that's probably in the Premiership one of the most interesting ones, because Selkirk obviously at home against Curry last weekend, a relatively settled squad from last year, but a lot of local guys, really having to go to the well to give their all on a Saturday. They didn't have a lot of replacements to make, but they stuck into the last kind of 20 minutes, and then the game went away from them. Hawks, a completely new team. They've changed tenfold, from the teams that we've seen in the last couple of years. So they were a bit closer against Hawick, but that could be a lot of things that have pulled that performance out of them. So it'll be an intriguing, that's probably the game that I'm looking at in terms I want to see the scoreline at the end of the day, because that will give us a good level as to where these clubs are. Well,
in the other match in the Premiership, Inverrackies against Musselburgh, so a little bit of almost an Edinburgh derby, you could call it. They're only 8 miles apart. Moving into National 1, Melrose and Gala both lost on the road to GHA and Watsonians respectively last Saturday, but now that they're back in the borders with home games, they'll be looking to kick off their campaigns with a win each. For Melrose, they host GHK and their head coach is Ian Chisholm.
We're really excited to be back at the Green Yards for the first time this season. It's a big day for us. We've got 14s playing in the morning, we've got their under 18s playing in the Scottish Cup in the afternoon, then us on at 3 o'clock. So it's a full day of rugby on the Green Yards, and we're obviously disappointed with our overall performance last week against GHA. After looking at the game, it's not as bad as it felt at the time, but there's still a lot of frustration carried into this week with look at the unforced errors and the penalties. In the end, it allowed GHA the platform to go and attack, and we want a reaction. We've asked for a reaction this week, and I've been really pleased with the quality of training and how much our senior players are taking lead on the field. I think the GHK, they look like they're going to be a different kind of threat to GHA. Historically, they want to play and move the ball in a similar way to us, and they'll be confident after a good win against Biggar. So we need to make sure that we're disciplined technically, tactically, mentally. We need to keep dropping information in around tackle height to each other and reviewing when the ball's dead, just around what we're seeing and what we're after and what we're struggling with. And really, we need to make sure that our effort levels match what the Jazzy deserves. And with holidays, with injuries, we've been struck with a bit of availability, and we're playing Gala A on Friday night, and there will be a couple of boys that double up from the bench, just to make sure that they're getting plenty of game time over the weekend. But from the squad last week, we've lost Craig Fairbairn to injury. Elliot Ruthven, Scott Clark and Harry Makowski are all away on holiday. It does cause issues, especially at the moment when we're struggling for backs. But look, it's a challenge, and it's one that the boys are looking to get into. For players that we've gained, we've got Hamish Weir coming in after a good performance for the Storm. He'll start at fullback, and Connor Grindle, who we've really liked the look of, he comes into the squad after arriving from Australia last week, where he was. He spent a bit of time with Gordon Highlanders, but he's a player that we've acquired from Toronto Arrows with the partnership that we've got there. And on Saturday we also welcome Oliver McKenzie over from Toronto Arrows. So we're excited to get these guys on the park and excited to see how they can add to our group and hopefully help us kick on.
Ian Chisholm. Now we'll have Sam Matthews at the Green Yards watching that one for us tomorrow, if he's recovered from his tonsillitis, of course. Gala will play at Netherdale against GHA tomorrow, and their director of rugby is Ewan Swinton.
Yes, last Saturday was very much a hard day at the office for the whole team. We accept collective responsibility for what was just a thoroughly off day. However, Saturday is a new day and GHA are a new challenge. I'm very confident that the team will respond to the challenge ahead of them. GHA are a big, strong and direct side and will be tough to beat on Saturday. But the team can do it. We proved that against Kelso a couple of weeks ago. There is loads of ability in this side and it will come out on Saturday. So I'm confident of a much improved performance and hopefully a different result to get the season back on track. We are ever confident and ever optimistic that our young, strong squad will improve day by day.
So Gala and Melrose with home games in National 1, both looking to put last week behind them, and that's all they can do. They've just got to wipe the slate clean.
Out the two teams, Melrose will probably be happier of the two respective camps, because GHA was always going to be a difficult place to go, off the fact that they've just been relegated. Melrose, new coaching set up, a couple of new personnel coming in there as well, but they scored some points. Yes, they leaked points, but that gives Ian Chisholm something to work on. With Gala's defeat, it gives you a lot more to work on, and you can't do that in a week. There's probably far too much. They've not scored a lot of points, and they conceded a shed load more than what Melrose did. So, going to a place where perhaps on paper we looked at it and we thought, it's probably one of those games that would be a lot closer. So, yeah, you're right. They have to just kind of, get over last week. But home form counts in League Rugby, and Gala will be hoping to get a victory against a GHA side who defeated Melrose the weekend before. So, they're strong. That's going to be a difficult game for Gala, but you would think Melrose out of those two games have a more favourable fixture to try and get some consistency.
Well, Andrew Fleming covering that one for us tomorrow. Switching to National 2, and Berwick make the trip to Bridge Hall, long trip as well, to take on Stirling County, who posted 55 points last week at Rubislaw against Aberdeen Grammar. And as coach Paul Pringle tells us, the job will be even harder for them this week.
This week we're off to Stirling in our first away game of the season. This comes on the back of what was a pretty strong but slightly frustrating performance last week, where we drew 22-all with Stuart's Melville. It was 3 points though, which is a good start, but for us we definitely saw it as an opportunity missed. We're still getting to grips with the new tackle height laws and just the enforcement of them. We probably were a little bit frustrated last week, when these sanctions were applied, and just getting, comfortable with it ourselves, what we need to do to keep ourselves on the right side of referees. So that's stuff we've worked on this week in training. Moving on to this weekend, unfortunately, we have a high volume of guys that are actually unavailable due to either being across to see the Rugby World Cup or family events. So we actually have 15 unavailable players this week. However, the lads have trained well. It does create opportunities for the new lads coming in, so we'll look to see, how they grasp it, where guys like Jordan Jackson came off the bench for us last week and, really kind of showed what he's about. So he'll be starting on Saturday, so it'll be great to see him coming in. Other guys like Duncan Horsburgh as well, these are really good opportunities. So let's hope these guys seize it with both hands. We're under no illusions it'll be a tricky tie, but it's a strong pack and a good set of backs. We're hoping that we can get the right outcome on the road.
So not easy putting a team on the park when a big match is on and your players are away supporting the national side. A bit of a grey area, isn't it? Because in terms of clubs trying to get dispensation, some will be affected more than others. But what do you do?
Yeah, exactly. What do you do? But we've obviously had conversations in the past about undermining leagues with playoffs and stuff like that. But this is where it gives you a false economy of a league, because this is national rugby when weddings happen, big events happen, stag do's, and a whole team can disappear, and that could be a really important game come the end of the season. My honest opinion, do you know, on the balance of what fixture they've got ahead of them, I don't really think it's going to matter too much. But it is a little bit poor that they can't be afforded dispensation when they've got such a sizable chunk of their squad going away to support Scotland at the World Cup. So, it's disappointing, especially for an English team. But it's disappointing that that's not been afforded to them to at least delay this fixture or play at a different time.
Well, also in National 2 tomorrow, it's the game at Inverleith between Stuart's Melville and Peebles. It's our live commentary game on Rugby Radio, and both teams coming away from last week unbeaten. Stumel got a draw at Berwick, and Peebles beat Gordonians. But as we'll hear now from Peebles head coach Graham Patterson, one of their big stars is missing.
We've identified a couple of areas that we feel we can improve on, which will hopefully give us the best chance of achieving that success. We're looking at gain line successes, both sides of the ball. So in terms of our attack, we've just given the guys a couple of areas to work on in training this week to improve that in terms of looking at breaching their line. But also what we're looking to do is not get our defensive line dented by them. So looking at our good high intensive line speed and ensuring that the tackle count is very high in terms of tackle completion rate, which was a slight concern last week and allowed Gordonians back into the game, having got ourselves in a good position. In terms of personnel changes, we have one change from the starting lineup with Matty Carrier away this weekend, so he's unavailable. So Willie Aitken comes off the bench and starts, and John Napier moves across the front row to start at hooker. All other personnel are the same. The bench is completely refreshed. We have two older members of the squad in terms of Neil Hogarth and indeed our captain Murdo Anderson returning, both having been unavailable last week. And also our third forward substitution is another product of our a great youth system in Rory Smith, who will be looking to get his debut off the bench in this inaugural year in seniors, which is always a good sign for the future. And our final sub is Scott Studdart, who returns to the squad, having had a 3-week layoff due to concussion sustained at the Kelso Border League game. So it's good to welcome these older players and experienced players back into the squad, giving us some quality in there, and also sprinkled with a little bit of youthful enthusiasm and performance from young Rory Smith as well, to show us what he can do at this level.
So losing Matty, obviously a big loss, but an opportunity for others, and some of them coming back. Neil Hogarth back in the side, and also Murdo Anderson, their captain. So not all bad news.
I think the return of Neil Hogarth and Murdo Anderson give you two different things in that team. They strengthen it. Yes, you lose a player with a lot of experience, a lot of leadership qualities, but you're bringing two players into the squad that bring their own strengths as well. Murdo Anderson, he's got such an engine in the back row, and Neil Hogarth as well. In the front row, he brings a lot of experience, a lot of grunt, a lot of physicality, and both of those players, because of their leadership roles, bring that leadership as well. Murdo Anderson, obviously club captain this year, Neil Hogarth, club captain last year. So, in terms of what they bring to that pack as well, they're bringing a lot of leadership to that, so that'll help caveat the loss of Matty Carrier.
Stuart Melville were pretty good at home last season. They had some narrow losses, which meant they didn't get the points that they could well have ended up with. At Inverleith, we expect them to be very competitive.
The only thing in terms of what might play into Peebles' hands is it's quite a wide, expansive pitch. I think if they play an expansive team, they do find it very, very difficult, and I do wonder whether that might play into Peebles' hands more than Stuart Melville.
Of course, you can tune in via the websites at either bordersrugby.net or rugbyradio.co.uk, whatever takes your fancy. And Inverleith, a great ground to report from, so we'll be on air from 2:30 tomorrow. We're also going to be filming that one, so you can watch highlights of that game along with the match between Kelso and Heriots. That's happening on Sunday. Well, into the East Leagues now, and newly promoted Langham lost last weekend in a high-scoring game against Broughton. 43-33 was the scoreline, but they do have a home game tomorrow at Milntown against Royal High, who were a National League team last season. Captain of Langham again is Nathan Smith.
This Saturday we have Royal High coming down to Langham again, another team I don't really know much about. I know a few of the older boys have played them in the past, but a lot of us have never played Royal High, so that'll be an interesting find when they get down. We're really excited to play at home again. We've spent the last few years really trying to build a buzz about the club again, and any chance we get to play in front of our home crowd, we'll be excited for that. We really want to right some wrongs from last week as well. I know we're frustrated about the start that we made in the game. First 10-15 minutes probably gave them too much respect, and probably just had it in our head too much, the step up that we were making, and we were a bit shell-shocked first 10-15 minutes. But I think after that we managed to really put down what we're about, and some wide play and really quick rugby took its toll on them, and we managed to get scores back. But it's just the physicality that I noticed the difference was in, and I think as well the tackle laws was in our head. I know that game, the pre-season game we had against Annan, was refereed really strictly on that, and I think we had it in our head that you have to go low or nothing else really, and they had some really strong ball carriers and just managed to break the line too many times. So we know the level now that this league's going to be at, and confident that with our game that we play, we'll be able to tire some teams and get round them that way. So I'm really looking forward to this weekend. The squad's very much unchanged, as it is every season with us. We kind of have a small group, but we managed to keep it together home and away games, so it's much unchanged. Callum Henderson comes back. That's a handy player to have coming back in. His tackling and poaching over ball is something that any team would like to have, so we look forward to him coming back in. And I'm personally just really really happy with how the back line's looking. Really young, fast lads that just want to run all day. So we'll see what Royal High come down with, and fingers crossed the forwards can put it on a plate for us, and we'll go wide when we can.
Well, certainly Langham love to perform for their home crowd, and although they're without coach Craig Hislop, who's at the World Cup, a great opportunity for Langham to get some points.
Yeah, I think it is a good opportunity for Langham at home to pick up some points. You know, obviously Royal High are a team that will be difficult because of their experience that they've had at the in national rugby, but Langham they'll want to try and turn around what their defeat last weekend, and going to Langham is always a difficult place to play. So, they'll be hoping that they can make home advantage count and give Craig Hislop something to return to in terms of a victory for Langham.
Duns are at Corstorphine in East 2, and both Hoyt teams are at home in the same division. Let's hear from Hoyt Lindean's coach Simon Spalding, making his debut on Friday Rugby Preview. They're taking on Dalkeith.
We're looking to build on from last week, playing a good Livingston side. We showed some signs of good rugby, but penalties ultimately cost us the game. We hardly had any possession, so we've had a lot of work in training this week to try and prepare for Dalkeith, who we know will be a good side. They had a really good win last week, and I think they've had a lot of players from other sides and new players into their squad, so they'll bring a lot of strength and depth into the game. Hopefully we can put what we've put into practice through the week at training into a game this weekend and look to go out and get a first win of the season.
Simon Spalding in charge of Lindean this season, but what about Hoyt Harlequins under the direction of Deke Armstrong this season? They lost heavily last week at Dunbar, and tomorrow they welcome Pennycook. Captain this season is Liam Smith.
The boys are looking forward to this weekend's game against Pennycook at home on Saturday, and we had a good training session last night, working on a tighter defence and a little bit more structure in attack. Pennycook's result last weekend was good, so it's going to be another tough game, but hopefully we'll have another good session and give them a bit of a match-up.
Liam Smith. In East League 3, Gallow IM travel to Trinity Accies, and Earlston looking for back-to-back wins against Lismore. Their coach this season is Cammy Hill.
It's Lismore at home this weekend, which I would imagine will be a different test from what we faced in Edinburgh Medics, going off the reports I've heard from last season. But the coaching team and the lads are excited going into the game after a hard-fought win last weekend. There were some huge positives, such as the defence I thought was really good, especially towards the end. Fitness was outstanding, so it shows the hard work the lads have been putting in pre-season is paying off, which is always good to see. In attack, our set piece worked really well, especially our line-outs, which is a big positive for me, but we still have a lot to work on in them areas. But that's only going to come with more game time, more minutes we play, the better it'll get. We've went away this week and we've worked hard on a few things at training, focusing a lot around the breakdown. That's where I thought we were just slightly off the pace, getting turned over quite a few times. So I'm hoping what we've worked on in training this week, we can bring into this weekend's fixture and kind of rectify them issues. Squad-wise, we've had a few injuries in Stephen Davidson, his knee, and Craig Bruce's ribs, which isn't ideal first game of the season. But these things happen. But on the plus side, we have Aaron Patterson and Stevie Denham returning, which is like for like position wise, so them slotting in isn't going to be an issue, and it'll be a big help for the back line as well, which is pretty young. As for the pack, remains pretty much unchanged, which is always good to get some consistency in that area. But overall, we're really optimistic and we're hoping to carry on a good start to the season.
Cammy Hill making his debut on the Friday Rugby Preview. Good to hear from him as well. So Dale, some local wins hopefully to look forward to in the East Leagues.
Yeah, I think the fixtures over all the leagues this weekend are a little bit more favourable for the Borders teams, But you look at the 10 league teams; they're all really challenging. I don't think there's going to be any easy fixtures for any club this year, but certainly we'll be hoping for a better return this weekend than perhaps what we got last weekend.
Well, we're live on Rugby Radio from 2:30 tomorrow, coming to you direct from Inverleith for Stuart's Melville against Peebles. We'll have television highlights of of that game, and also Kelso versus Heriots over the weekend. That's on Borders Rugby TV. And don't forget to check out our new Scottish Club Rugby podcast, which is now out. There's a new website at rugbyradio.co.uk, as well as our main site for everything to do with Borders Rugby at bordersrugby.net. Do check it all out, and we'll see you on Rugby Radio tomorrow at 2:30. But for now, from Dale and me, a very good night.